Hello, welcome back to the Mastery Club 10 Lessons Online Adventure. We're up to session number 5, first force, second force, third force. But before we leap into the new material, let's take that moment to think about something we're grateful for. So just take a moment. Let's take another moment, this time to focus on this goal of yours and visualize it, right? So pick one of those things that's important to you. You can actually stop this video and do this as many times as you like with as many of your goals as you like. But just pick one of those things. Take 3 deep breaths. And see yourself achieving it. See it, hear it, feel it, smell it, taste it. Have that experience be so real to you, and make sure that you also have a moment of gratitude. Feel how wonderful that will be when you've achieved this goal that's so important to you. So pause the video and take a moment to do that. And the third thing is a goals update, right? So have a think about your goals. Grab that piece of paper and jot down what was the goal, what's the action you took in the last week, what have you achieved? Acknowledge yourself, recognize. And what have you learnt? You might also want to think about what's your next step for this week coming. So take a moment to do those things. Last week, we looked at how a pirate's treasure map shows all of those dangers and hazards on the way to the treasure, but only an X for the treasure. And so we got really focused on the X, and we made a treasure map, right? We got really clear on what was the thing that would be a treasure for us, what would we like to achieve, and we put that all on the map. This week, our focus is on the journey, right? And while pirates may have to deal with wild seas and stormy weather and other pirates attacking them or government forces attacking them, and then ferocious natives and biting insects and snakes and all the rest of it, well, they've got to deal with all that stuff. And then when they get to the treasure, they might even have it stolen from them. We have our own sets of challenges in our modern day, maybe not war-painted natives or venomous insects, but we do have our own challenges. And this session is all about how do we deal with them. The big question of this session is your goal worth the effort? You've probably heard that Thomas Edison tried 1,000 times to make the light globe. A journalist once asked him, "So how does it feel to have failed 1,000 times?" And Thomas Edison said, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. I just found 1,000 ways to not make a light globe." What a great attitude. Columbus is the Italian who led 4 voyages from Europe in search of trade routes to Asia and discovered America along the way. This discovery resulted in the colonization of America. But what's interesting to me is that it took him over 10 years to raise the funding for those expeditions. Would you have been so persistent? We often hear of film stars and actors and singers and so forth, performers, who seem to become overnight successes. But what we're not always aware of is that leading up to that big success, before they made their big splash, before they were handed that big opportunity, there were lots of years of small roles. Bette Midler, for instance, had 17 years of small roles before she broke through and became a big overnight sensation. Brian Tracy is an expert on goal setting and achievement. And he says that several self-made millionaires were interviewed, and it was discovered that on average, they had each had 16 businesses that did not succeed before the 17th, where they really made their money and their success. So did they fail 16 times? Or did they just learn 16 times on the way to that 17th success? The big question of this session: is your goal important enough to you to stick with it through time and through challenges? So this brings us to the content of this fifth session: first force, second force, third force. So what are those forces? The first force is your intention. The second force is the challenges that arise. And the third force is your response to those challenges. There's a law in physics that states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So when we put out an energetic impulse, we'll receive one back. The question is, what will we do with it? Have you heard the story about the boy who wanted to help the butterfly? The boy discovered a butterfly squeezing its way out of a cocoon, and he saw that it was struggling. So he wanted to help the butterfly, and he went and got a pair of scissors and just snipped away at the cocoon. And the cocoon fell open, and the butterfly just flopped out. It lay there for a moment, crawled along a little, eventually died. It never flew. Well, the boy was devastated because he hadn't meant to harm the butterfly at all. He wanted to help her. So he ran to his grandfather and told him what had happened and asked him why. And the grandfather explained that the struggle for the butterfly and squeezing its way through the cocoon was essential, because what it did was it made the butterfly strong. It squeezed all the moisture out of the butterfly's wings so that it could fly and lift its weight. But without going through that struggle, without having the moisture squeezed out of its wings, the butterfly was just too moist and heavy, and it lacked strength, and it was floppy, and it just died. You know, our lives are a little bit like that too. From the time that we're born, we have to squeeze our way through a birth canal, and then we experience lots of other challenges through our lives that squeeze us a bit as well. But those challenges serve us, don't they? So what's the point of all the difficulties and challenges? That if we were only supported, we would lack backbone, resilience, strength, skill. The challenges are there so that we'll develop those things. What if we were only challenged? We'd be exhausted, we'd feel like giving up. So life delivers us a balance of support and challenge so that we'll grow. And the difficult experiences in our lives are there to support us by challenging us. People often think that they would like to have a really easy life. But just imagine what that would be like, lying around on a couch and having everything handed to you on a plate. You know, you'd soon get bored, wouldn't you, and have really slack muscles from lack of exercise and lack of challenge. So do you think that's an absurd image? It is, isn't it? But still, you know, people do aspire to a life where they will be positive, peaceful, kind, and happy all the time. And they imagine a world without borders, right? A world where everyone experiences peace and only peace all the time. But that's actually impossible. It's a fallacy, an illusion. Because for life to exist, we need both light and dark. Both kinds of experiences are essential. The dark side of life is as essential as the light side. We need both so that we'll grow. And we literally need both to exist in matter, in physicality. Because, you know, if we were completely enlightened, that's what we would be. Beings of light with no physical body or experience. Let me tell you a secret. I used to believe that masters have an easy life. Not one of those lying on the couch lives, but I just thought that they only had to think of something and then there it would be. And I have to confess that that was why the idea of mastery appealed to me when I was young. But I've come to understand that it's not like that at all. Masters don't have an easy life, because if you want to become a master, you have to master something. And true masters know that true mastery is about dealing with a series of progressively more challenging challenges and mastering them. For example, in the Mastery Club, I talk about the rodeo riders and how to become really good. You've got to be able to stay on a really wild horse. A masterful yachtsman. To be really good at that, to develop that mastery, they have to be able to deal with wild seas. Someone who is an expert communicator, really skillful. To become so skillful They have to have been able to deal with some really difficult people. So those are great examples of the three forces, setting the intention, the difficulties and challenges, and then that momentum, that response that you make. It's kind of obvious that we need those things like rough seas and wild horses and so forth if we want to develop skill. But we still often hold to this little dreamy, illusory idea that we can become strong and resilient and smart and successful without being challenged. And it's an illusion. So, the second force is the price that we pay in achieving our goal. And discipline is the effort to stick with something until it becomes a habit. Now it's your turn. Let's go backwards into the past and think of some examples of your own. Think of a time when you had an intention, there was something you wanted to do or achieve, and something got in the way. Something seemed to stop you. Maybe you wanted to go to an outing or a concert or a party or something and you were sick. So what was your third force? How did you respond to that second force, that obstacle? Take some time after you've paused the video to jot some of those things down and notice them and reflect. And then let's go forwards into the future. Think about the goals that you've written down, the things that are important to you now, and reflect on what might be challenges and obstacles ahead of you. This is not negative thinking. This is being real. So identify potential second forces that might be lying in wait, and think of what third force you might be inspired to bring to bear on those challenges. How will you deal with them? What is the price that you will be prepared to pay? When we reflect on this process, we realize that the second force offers us many benefits. It might be uncomfortable and frustrating and disappointing at the time, but there's always a blessing or a benefit if we look for it, and masters look for it. Which brings me to a point about gratitude. It's really easy to be grateful for a blue-skied, glorious day, or for presents or lovely experiences, and it's really hard to be grateful for dreary, cold days or disappointments, frustrations, tragedies. But the ability to be grateful for those things, those difficult experiences, is a true marker of mastery. As Dr. John DeMartini says, even the most terrible events contain hidden blessings. The masters know this truth and remain undisturbed, while those of lesser wisdom swing from elation to depression as they move through positive and negative events on their way to understanding. This week, anticipate your challenges and share them as honestly as you can on the forum so that we can support you. And see if you can be grateful for something that seems like a difficulty or a challenge or a loss. What could be the benefit in it? What could be the blessing? I'll see you on the forum and then next week for session number 6 on the law of polarity. Create a great week.